you familiar with this program, that word, proprietary, may come as a little bit of a surprise. But you see folks, the whole reason that we promote free software here on this channel is because we believe that everybody should have a... Hey everybody, it's your boy, Orlando McBangle, here today with a little program to access their culture. And right now, a big part of that culture is indie games. Sulfur, in the opinion of this humble DJ, just happens to be one of the most remarkable indie games of the last few years. So sit back, relax, and don't touch. Okay, so we're pretty much just gonna get straight into it here. As this little bronze tchotchke is explaining, the lore here is that the witch we just saw burned down our church along with all the patrons inside. As the father of that establishment, we're naturally pretty ticked. Luckily, it turns out that hell is real, the whole gang ended up here, and revenge is completely justified. Is it strange that you don't remember any of this? Well, sure. But hey, that's head trauma. Luckily, this little guy here is gonna help you. So unless you've got any silly questions, it's time to say, I heard everything I need. Now, lore-wise, these primordial pits serve as the power source that is going to enable you and your bronze little friend to get revenge upon that cursed witch. Mechanically, however, they're one of the things that helps to cement Sulfur's status as an innovative title. You see, Sulfur is a hybrid roguelike extraction shooter. When your amulet is charged, and only when your amulet is charged, you're able to return to the safe haven of the church and stash your stuff. It's a subtle change to the roguelike formula, but one that fundamentally changes the game's feel. Oh, and speaking of feel, don't let the game's cartoonish charm fool you. The gunplay is tight, the strategy is deep, and some of these fights can get pretty heated. Oh, and by the way, did I mention that there's cooking? So here's the game plan for this playthrough. Ultimately, our goal is to get through every single level in this game, from the opening scene to the ending credits. We'll mostly be playing the game as intended, taking full advantage of the extraction shooter mechanics. Although, if we were doing a challenge run, finding a motorcycle helmet right off the bat wouldn't be the worst way to get started. Now, I didn't want to bore anybody with hours upon hours of uncut footage, so I came up with a little bit of a gimmick. I decided that I was allowed to try exactly 5 runs through caves before I had to fight the boss and move on. So in this video, each level that you see me run through is from a different run. Here on level 2, you can see that I have a Mario that I got during the first run. Now, comparing the Mario to our starting one, the Dirk, one thing that really sticks out is that it has shotgun shells, giving it a fairly high base damage. And unlike a stereotypical video game shotgun, it actually has a pretty decent effective range, which will absolutely come into play later. That said, it does have one pretty significant limitation, that being that it only holds 2 shells at a time. In thinking ahead to Cousin, the boss of the caves, I'm thinking that I'll probably need some other weapon to deal with the waves of minions. For Cousin himself, however, the Mario, if built properly, could be exactly what we need. I'll be spending most of the next few runs leveling it up so that it can accomplish its goal. Oh, yeah, I guess I should explain that real quick. Another interesting mechanic in Sulfur is that you can't just put whatever oils you want on whatever guns you want. You have to first level the gun up by shooting baddies with it. Lore-wise, it doesn't really make any sense, but from a gameplay perspective, it means that even the most absurd builds feel completely earned. Quick deets, by the way, you're allowed to have up to 5 oils and scrolls per gun. Each oil or scroll must be unique, and you can only have 1 scroll. As a quick aside, if you are interested in seeing some challenge runs, check out Homie and Shirt. They both recently did a contest where they raced to complete the game the fastest using bad builds provided by the other. At the time of recording, we are still anxiously awaiting the 300-word fanfic that the loser is required to write. Who knows, maybe it will involve our favorite boy, Scrip. Couple of fun facts about Scrip, by the way. He sells armor, he loves cheese, and he is freaking adorable. Fun tip about those green sulfcap mushrooms, by the way, is that they can be combined with metal scraps to create sulfcap grenades. You can also use the arguably more abundant mystery meat, but I prefer to use that for French hot dogs. In any case, now that our Mario has made its first level, we'll be making our first modification to it shortly. But first, a little bit of a philosophical question. Is it okay to murder innocent goblins? See, if you ask our boy Squid why the goblins attack us, he says it's purely out of stupidity, which strongly implies that all the goblins we fight are innocent. That said, the fact that there seems to be a limitless supply, combined with the nonchalant penchant for violence expressed by other characters in the game, suggests to me that the father is not the only person who regenerates, despite what the lore says. Now that we're on our 3rd run, the Mario is level 2 and has both an enchantment and an oil on it. You'd think that would mean that it was much stronger than before, but unfortunately, we have a little bit of a problem. The scroll that I've chosen, Holy Fire, adds unlimited penetration to the bullet. This can be pretty handy in some situations, though it does cut the rate of fire in half. As for the oil, well, watch. Yikes, a reload that's practically in slow motion. You see, your old boy McWrangle here is a big dum-dum. The Stiffy Fit oil clearly says that it reduces reload speed, as a penalty for increasing durability. I misread that as decreasing reload time. Given the Mario's very small magazine and our newly reduced rate of fire, this is hardly shaping up to be the boss killer that I had imagined. Luckily, we do have some cyclic oil in our back pocket. Cyclic oil does increase the reload speed by 90%, but it increases the spread by 1 as well. So the question is, will that 90% be enough to save our reload speed? And how much of a problem is that +1 spread? Well, it looks like the reload speed isn't as good as it would have been with the cyclic alone, but it is usable. And as for that spread, I guess it'll just have to do. Now, normally I don't show a whole lot of inventory finagling, but in this case, making room for the egg on the ground had a pretty interesting consequence. You see, the hunting scope, when equipped, will cause 25% of your bullets to crit, which I'm pretty sure means that they do double damage. The only catch is that it doesn't work unless you're aiming down the sights. Now the way I figure it is that since shotgun shells fire 8 bullets apiece, we should be getting 2 bullet crits per shot. I don't know how much of a difference that's really going to make, but I will say it feels pretty dramatic. And hey, at least that penetration is doing some work for us. Now, although I do plan to replace it, I decided to give my Dirk an enchantment called Sacred Ground. This enchantment has a couple of interesting properties, one of which is that it reduces the gun's damage by 50%. On the other hand, it increases damage by 300% against ghosts. Given that ghosts are, quite frankly, the bane of my existence, I think that makes this the best enchantment in the game. Seriously, I know you don't have a baseline to compare that to, but that fight was an absolute breeze compared to your typical ghost encounter, at least for me. A fun fact about these ammunition boxes, by the way, is that they haven't always been in the game. A lot of players like them because they basically give you a lot of freedom in how you play the game. If you're allowed to buy a limited quantity of a certain ammo type, and that's your favorite ammo, then great. And if you have enough stamps to put these in the church, even better. But if you're having trouble finding an ammo box, know that the old ways still work. Not only do vendors still sell ammunition in limited quantities, but the game actually gives you some ammunition for free, just passively through playing. Some of the more obvious ways of stretching that ammo include making every shot count by aiming for the head to get maximum damage. Use your melee weapon when it makes sense, and try not to spam bullets on corpses. But if you're running particularly low, I think the most interesting method of stretching this ammunition is to simply use different guns. Hey, the game's got a ton of guns. Might as well use them. Oh, and speaking of new guns, you can see that I've picked up a green salamander here. It's a good thing too, because I was starting to get worried that we weren't going to find a second gun. Sure, I love our derpy little Dirk Ghostbuster, but for the big fight with Cousin and the lads, I don't think that it's quite what we're looking for. Now, I do have some plans for what we're going to do with this salamander, but thanks to that oil blunder from earlier, we also have to make sure that we get the Mario up to level 4. Luckily, I have the perfect redemption oil in mind. You know, one thing I will say about this game, when you get into a groove, it can be somewhat hypnotic. Trudging through caverns, jumping across chasms, slashing/shooting anything that gets in your way does have a certain zen to it once you develop the proper skill level for the game. But then there are times when you decide to roll a barrel into a room so that you can blow up hypothetically future goblins, and you find the process so tedious that you decide to just blow the barrel up early, only to then be ambushed by the very goblins you could have blown up with better foresight. Is there anything to be learned here? Some fable about Sisyphus being happy, or perhaps the fate of the best laid plans of men? I don't know, man. Maybe you shouldn't be taking advice from someone who just shot a baby, you know what I'm saying? In any case, I shall take the appearance of this fountain as evidence that the veins of the earth draw near. For you see, the room we see looks very similar to this one. Whoa. Deja vu, am I right? Now, on your first playthrough, this plays a nice little cutscene that tells you a bit more about the lore, but I'll leave you to discover that on your own time. What I will say is that for a game where the story isn't the main focus, it's actually not half bad. Oh, hey buddy, how you doing? See, just like I said, the slaughter has a certain zen to it. In any case, now that we've acquired our primordial essence, we could, if we wanted to, return to the safety of the church. Let all that zen put us to sleep. But I think you'll find shortly that it's really worth it to push through to the end of level 5. So here we go. Now that we're on our 5th and final run, the Mario has indeed made it to level 4. You'll see its final form shortly. But first, we have the pressing task of trying to get this salamander up to level 3, so that it can accept the enchantments I have planned. These later floors do tend to be a little bit more action heavy, but even here, we have zen moments, like waiting for the screen cool to subside. Of course, there's also moments that make you go, oh snap, I'm in danger. You know, I will say it would have been nice if I had the Mario out when those goblins came around the corner. Just imagine if I had penetrated right through that initial wave, hit the barrel, and blown the smithereens out of all the goblins behind them. I still would have gotten taken by surprise by the other group of goblins, but hey, it would have been glorious. And I happen to think the caves look pretty good with a red paint job. In any case, the salamander should be pulling its weight pretty shortly here, for as soon as it hits level 3, I shall imbue it with the top tier scroll that I've been saving in my back pocket. Oh, and if you're wondering where to get these top tier scrolls, you get them by asking Kevin to combine the mediocre ones. Here, you can see me combining 2 Ember Scrolls into the no-nonsense Explosion. wonderful for both utility and combat. I've actually never used slush before, but since the game's given it to me, I guess we'll have to try it together. It also sells oil. Alright, perfect. Now that the salamander has ascended to level 3, let's imbue it with the power of Storm Surge. This area of effect scroll will electrocute all creatures within a certain radius, stunning them and dealing damage. Combined with an oil that grants penetration and a cartoon oil for maximum bullet bounces, this can really wreak havoc on groups of enemies. Oh, and yes, it does hurt the father if you get too close. But thankfully, we picked up this raincoat to protect us. And now for the main event. At least here on level 5. Since the last time you saw it, I've added a slow punch oil to the Mario, adding 30 damage to each one of its 8 pellets. And since they start with 40 damage, that means it's practically doing double damage. On top of that, I'd like to point out that the Scroll of Holy Fire has an additional property. In addition to penetrating an unlimited number of targets, each target penetrated will add 50% damage to the bullet. That means that armored opponents, such as these barrel boys here, actually take extra damage instead of being protected. With all that in mind, I was kind of hoping that this fight would be a breeze. But whether the gun wasn't as strong as I had hoped, or I was having a bad day, that didn't quite pan out. Sure, I was able to make the fight trivial by using my magic shoes to hop up on this ledge here, but we're not going to be able to take advantage of that sort of thing when we fight Cousin. In any case, with the giant slain, it's time to collect our reward. In this case, a feature gun oil. Now, in runs 1 through 4, this is where I teleported back to the church. Since this run is our 5th and final, I'm going to be pressing on. Now, Caves actually does have 7 floors in total, but in the interest of time, I'm pretty much going to be cutting straight to the final boss. Sure, that does mean that you'll be missing out on Goblin Wizards. But hey, I gotta leave something for you to discover on your own, am I right? Now, going into this fight, like I mentioned, I was a little bit concerned about the damage output. But with the very first shot, I realized that probably wasn't going to be an issue. Now, a lot of people consider Cousin to be the easiest fight in the game, but that doesn't mean he's a complete pushover. For starters, his ability to appear behind you and strike with annoyingly accurate mud balls is really going to test your situational awareness. And for second, in case you didn't catch that opening dialogue, he's a mean son of a gun who literally eats humans for breakfast. Oh, and did I mention that he has help? Of course, being in a confined room, you can't just back up like you normally can. You're gonna have to learn how to properly kite. Or, just stun lock them all with lightning. In any case, his position as the first boss in the game does mean that you're less likely to have a completely OP build on hand. Though, as I've shown in this video, it's not too difficult to scrape together something workable. And bing bang bong, just like that, we've successfully beaten the first area of the game. In our next Sulfur video, we'll be going to town, where we have to contend with enemies who can actually shoot back. But in the next video, I'll be taking a look at a free shooter known as Free doom. Oh, and if you're one of the 3.5 people who's here for Cradle of Clay, don't worry, it's moving along, albeit slowly. In any case, Wrangle, Bangle, out. Yeah, so I was living in Colorado, right? And I joined this mycological society. Just something to do to get me out of the house, right? And on our first foray, I remember one guy actually did find psilocybin. But that's not what we were there for, right? We were mostly just there to find neat mushrooms and possibly eat some of those mushrooms. I found a whole bunch of what they call slimy jacks, which go good in soups, but otherwise not very good because, you know, they turn slimy when you cook them, right? And then on top of that, I found just like 2 or 3 little coral mushrooms. Very pretty, but apparently there's like a 50% chance whether they give you a stomachache or not. And I figured, what the heck, I'll take the chance. So I made this curry, and I packed it up for lunch to have at work the next day. First of all, one of the best curries I've ever made. Turns out, whole spices really makes a huge difference. Second of all, yes, I did get a stomachache, and wow. You know, they say mushrooms expand your mind. In this case, it expanded my mind by showing me that, you know, listen, I didn't know it was possible for someone to feel that way. It was just, I mean, it was in knots, man. It was crazy. Very, yeah, I don't know, look, not every story is like the most riveting story ever, alright? Sometimes you eat some bad food and you get a stomachache, and that's the whole story.
Envision a world where we seize our destiny for ourselves and get in the comments!
Get in the comments.